Video games are a medium that has seen a lot of change since they were first introduced. From tough-as-nails arcade cabinets designed to beat you down and take your lunch money, to the first home console games designed to beat you down so that it turns a game that should only take 35 minutes to complete into a game that's 150 hours long. Then we come to the modern age, where developers realize that people actually like to win sometimes, so they start designing games to be much more inclusive and approachable. Rather than making their games as difficult as possible to help stretch out the playtime, developers began learning how to craft fully thought out stories and experiences with a clear vision in mind of how they wanted players to experience their game from start to finish. But this shift in design also gave rise to a question that gamers across the globe have yet to find an answer to. How long should a video game be? Now, this question has been asked quite a bit by the toppest of minds across gaming forums and message boards, and to be completely honest, there really is no clear-cut answer.
For real?
Or rather, the answer changes drastically depending on genre and quality. Open-world games, for example, are expected to have dozens or even hundreds of hours of content, simply due to the greater amount of space they have to work with. They're the types of games you're expected to take your time with and really immerse yourself into the setting created by the developers. However, some open-world games abused this expectation and decided that rather than fill their world with interesting and engaging content, they wanted to fill it up with a bunch of tedious bullshit, cluttering up the world with an endless supply of collectibles, enemy outposts, landmarks, more fucking collectibles until you can't walk 2 steps without tripping over some force-fed content designed to plug your dopamine receptors like the dumb little science experiment Ubisoft thinks you are. Speaking of Ubisoft, they really are the worst offender in this regard, but you can see how their influence on open-world design has spilled over to other titles as well, with other games leaning into that philosophy of just giving the players something to do rather than making sure the things they're doing are actually interesting. And to be fair, I can sympathize with this from a development perspective. When you have to fill up a sprawling map with stuff to do, it can be tempting to just slap another outpost on a hillside and call it a day. However, there are open world games that do actually hit the mark on longer, more involved experiences. Breath of the Wild, Yakuza 0, Skyrim, Infamous, Arkham City, Ghost of Tsushima, these are the games I'm happy to spend 100 hours plus exploring the world, dicking around with the environment system, or just creating orphans by the truckload. Open world games by their very nature are designed to waste your time, but if the time you're wasting is enjoyable, then it's not really time wasted, is it? I think Bob Dylan said that.
But hang on, Donnie. Aren't there other types of games besides open world?
You know what? You are absolutely right, Evil Donnie, and what the fuck are you doing out of your cage? Some games take a more linear approach to their design, meaning that players will have a much more controlled and curated experience. However, this can be slightly more difficult to pull off on the part of the developers. Games with a more open structure have the option of just handing a bunch of tools to the player for them to experiment with and letting them make their own fun. With a more linear structure, the player sits down and is like, okay game, what do you got for me? And then the game is like, oh I know, how about a fucking gunfight on a moving train with an attack helicopter? Yes, very entertaining. What's next? Oh, I got one. How about beating the ever-loving shit out of Poseidon with your bare fucking hands? Oh, that's pretty metal. Alright, that's pretty good. What else you got? Oh, I'm sorry, is that not good enough? How about a heartfelt goodbye to one of your oldest partners as they prepare to sacrifice themselves to save you and your surrogate daughter? Oh, right in the feels, that's a good one. What's next? How about a puzzle?
Here we go.
With a funny robot?
Yes, hello, no, we're not stopping. Don't make eye contact, whatever you do. No, thanks, we're good.
Give me 2 robots.
It's been a long time. How have you been? I've been really busy being dead.
When it comes to more linear games, the developers need to be constantly finding new ways to keep the player engaged, whether it be through pulse-pounding action sequences, a compelling atmosphere, interesting and varied gameplay mechanics, a genuinely well-written story, or more often than not some combination of these elements. Linear games are in a constant juggling act, trying to entertain the player and keep them consistently engaged throughout the entire experience. And because of this, they tend to be relatively shorter experiences for the most part. Because while juggling is fun to watch, juggling is also pretty fucking hard, and all it takes is one misstep for players to start wondering whether this juggler actually knows what the fuck they're doing. It is significantly easier for a game to juggle for 10 to 15 hours than to juggle for 30 to 40 hours. Because juggling bowling pins is one thing, but if you want me to watch that shit for more than 20 hours, you better start juggling chainsaws or live cats at some point, or I'm just gonna go back and play with my Legos some more. Because even if playing with Legos is an arguably less defined experience, it's an experience that is unique to me as the player. So if a game game is going to restrict the player to a more controlled experience, that experience better be polished and engaging throughout, or players are going to wonder why they're bothering to stick around. And none of this is to say that the length of a game has any real correlation to its overall quality, but it is significantly easier to create an experience that is fun and engaging for the entire duration if it's 10 to 15 hours, rather than the 20, 30, or even 40 plus mark. Uncharted 4, Portal 2, God of War, Half-Life 2, BioShock, Doom 2016, some of the greatest games ever created, and they all reside within that 10 to 15 hour mark. And you know, this would be a really compelling argument if not for the fact that Persona 5 had the fucking audacity to exist. 100 goddamn hours of turn-based combat, sitting in class doing nothing, flirting with pedophiles, and cucking a sentient cat. I have beaten this shit 4 times.
For real?
This man is responsible for about 60% of my serotonin production. I have lost control of my life.
For real?
But there's one final aspect of game length that we unfortunately have to address. Money. Gaming may be cheaper and more widely accessible than ever before, but that doesn't change the fact that $60 per game can add up if you want to keep up with the newest releases when they come out. And because of this, many people are seemingly less concerned with how good a game is and more with how many raw hours of gameplay they can squeeze out of it. And to be honest, that's fair. If you're dropping $60 on a video game, you deserve to get your money's worth out of it. However, this is also unfair and a little bit horseshit, because as stated earlier, a game's length has absolutely zilch, zero, nada, nothing to do with the game's quality. And while much of the perceived value of a game comes down to each individual's tastes and preferences, in my opinion at least, a game delivering a fun and engaging experience is much more important than length when it comes to the value of a video game. Far Cry 6 is a tonally confusing, bafflingly constructed retread of a series that has long since lost its way, and even though I could theoretically play it for up to 50 hours, I regret paying more than $20 for this empty shell of a franchise I used to love. Meanwhile, Metroid Dread is a compelling return to the series' 2D roots with branching, layered level design, tight controls, cool as fuck boss fights, and sequence breaks that have caused hundreds of speedrunners to fail No Nut November on day 1. And yet gamers are bitching because you can 100% it in around 12 to 15 hours. We truly are a doomed species. But now we've come to the point in the video where I realize that the title is How Long Should a Video Game Be? And I should probably have some sort of answer ready.
Get on with it.
So, what is the perfect length for a video game? And the answer is however long you're willing to play it for. To say that there exists a perfect length for a video game is a reductive statement and doesn't do justice to the sheer amount and variety of experiences the medium is capable of delivering. And given how subjective people's tastes can be from person to person, there is no magic number of hours that will ensure you get the maximum amount of enjoyment out of a game. I didn't finish The Phantom Pain, but I played it for about 60 hours or so, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. I played Far Cry 6 for 2 hours, and now I'm a ketamine addict. I've played Nier Automata all the way through 5 times, and I'm still probably not done with it. On an unrelated note, Logan, if you don't fucking play Nier Automata, so help me God, I will kill Gundam. Don't fucking test me. As I've gotten older, while I do find myself leaning more towards shorter experiences that can be completed without having to commit several dozen hours to seeing the end of it, I still find enjoyment in running around an open world game as well, and just letting myself get immersed in the fantasy the developers are selling. So in the end, the perfect length for a video game is entirely up to you and what you enjoy. Shit, that wasn't an answer at all. Fuck. Well, I think a pretty good benchmark is Dr. Seuss's Cat in the Hat, because that game